So I'd now like to introduce Joe Hammer, who's the chairman of Bioforward's board, and he is with the Doman Company. Joe.
Thank you, Lisa. As Bioforward's chairman, and on behalf of membership, I'd like to thank all of our sponsors today, and for each of you for taking the time to join us. For those of you that I haven't had a chance to meet yet, I recently accepted a role as the Chief Development Officer at the Doman Company, which works every day to advance our vision of creating a more efficient, effective, and easy-to-use health experience through our companies including Doman Life Science Services, Red Arrow Labs, and my primary focus, the Doman Investment Group. Through Lisa Johnson's incredible leadership and through the work of an active board, the association is on a phenomenal trajectory. Over the last 18 months, Lisa has transformed the association through her creativity, passion, and fortitude. Let's all take this opportunity to thank Lisa for her hard work putting this extraordinary event together, along with the staff, and their daily efforts to grow Wisconsin's biohealth economy. I have the privilege of introducing a distinguished group of panelists that will discuss the topic, Why Healthcare? Leading Technology Companies Target Healthcare Solutions. You guys want to introduce you? So first, Dr. Bruce Novich, Division President of Fujifilm North America. Dr. Novich was recently appointed Executive Vice President and General Manager of Cellular Dynamics Life Science Business. And Steve Tolle, Global VP of Imaging Strategy at IBM Watson. Bruce and Steve's full bios are in the program, and our final panelist and moderator, Andrew Opichka, who is Information Technology Business Transformation Architect at Cisco Systems. Andrew, I'll let you take it from here.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome after lunch. Hopefully we can keep you awake and well entertained this afternoon. A little bit about Cisco. You think of Cisco as a network or an interface company, but believe it or not, Cisco has been in the healthcare market for quite some time. They started with just providing the backbone of the network and the route and switch many, many years ago, and provided the transport to all of the data that you guys collect and consume and study. What has really changed, or where Cisco is going now in the future, is we really believe the age of digitization is coming and is here upon us. And Cisco has now formed a new group called the Digital Transformation Group, and they've hired a lot of vertical expertise for either in healthcare or business or manufacturing. And within these experts that have been hired, I shouldn't say I am one of them, but I was also recruited. I have 18 years at Siemens Medical prior to joining Cisco, working in their medical IT division. And what we've realized is we need to look at how businesses are using or need to leverage their technology to drive their businesses forward. So our digital transformation groups are actually coming in and partnering with all of our sales force to help understand not just what a business could use, but how they could benefit from our technology and our partners' technology in a roadmap way, so that we can put them on a digitization journey to take them from where they are today, to provide them a roadmap of how they can leverage digitization and drive their business outcomes. So that's kind of our little short story of what Cisco's been doing, and I'll turn it over to Stephen to talk more about what IBM is doing and what their wonderful Watson.
Thanks. So I'm Steve Tolle. I run global strategy for IBM Watson Health when it comes to medical imaging. You all know IBM, a company that's been around a long time. This is the company, if you're not familiar, that NASA used to power putting the man on the moon. This is the company that established the worldwide standard and infrastructure for moving money around the world. It's still used today. The SWIFT system was actually built by IBM. This is the company that automated retail in the 70s. And this is a company that's not historically well known for healthcare, even though we have a $4 billion healthcare business. This is a company that about a year and a half ago decided we wanted to move out of the infrastructure, IT outsourcing space and move closer to the clinical space because Watson was evolving as a technology, artificial intelligence, we call it cognitive technology, was going to open up new insights for researchers and for physicians to change the way we do research or change the way we treat patients. So we set up Watson Health. We're about a year and a half old. We've already made about $4.5 billion in acquisitions to build this business. IBM knew that we didn't have the DNA of healthcare expertise. We needed to bring in some people who have that experience. I'm one of them. And so we've gone on this vision of how do we bring artificial intelligence or cognitive computing to researchers, helping them sift through billions of data points to find information they need to accelerate their research. We're actually training machines to read medical images to help diagnose patients more accurately and faster. We've actually done some work in our lab where we think we can cut the time in half that it takes a doctor to know that someone's got an intracranial hemorrhage. In an hour, it's a golden hour of truth when someone has a stroke. If you can cut the time it takes for a radiologist to diagnose that in half, that's a big deal because it could mean the patient lives or not. So that's the kind of work we're doing. And it's an exciting time to be at the very leading edge of some of this new technology.
Thanks. My name is Bruce Novich. I'm a division president of Fuji North America Corp. And most recently, I've been recruited to work at CDI to, if you will, Fujify CDI and bring the Fuji company assets and attributes and resources to a very exciting company. Fuji's perhaps not very well known in this market. In fact, I think many people are very surprised to see Fujifilm walk in with CDI people, but Fujifilm's been in the healthcare business for over 80 years. After a photo film, we developed X-ray film. We were one of the leading suppliers to the radiology community. That business then became digital. In the 70s, we invented the digital X-ray and also the information archiving and retrieval systems called PACS. We're in almost every major hospital across the world in the radiology areas. We then went to medical imaging, where we have a medical device business again, medical imaging. And then in the mid-2000s, we built on that to build a healthcare division that includes pharmaceuticals, regenerative medicine, and also specialty life sciences. So today we have about a $4 billion and growing healthcare business. CDI, as has been mentioned many times today, is our newest member and really represents one of many puzzle pieces that Fujifilm has either acquired or is growing inside to make regenerative medicine available to everyone in the future. And this is really at the heart of Fujifilm. If you see our mission statement basically says that our overarching aim is to improve the quality of people worldwide. And if you look at the three basic ideas for that, one is that we're living longer lives, and especially if you look in Japan, which has the second longest average lifespan at around 84 years. By the way, the US is down around 43rd at about 78 years. There's a great need in the world to be able to have the quality of life also be extended with the average lifetime. Many diseases are now becoming more prevalent as we have an aging population, so that affects quality of life. And the last is organ donation is and will continue to be a very urgent need. So tissue engineering or regenerative medicine can play a big role in terms of organ replacement in the future. So Fuji has a very deep mission to take this as an art of the long view and has a wealth of operating businesses to be able to fund these. So that's why Fuji's in this business and what we're doing.
Amazing. A company that's been around for so long has actually invented himself out of business several times. He's continuing to stay in the business. I think that's very commendable. Do you think the disruption, the digital disruption that is really upon us, it's sometimes looked upon as a buzzword, but I really think the digital disruption is really a new high watermark of where we need to be. I think if you're not part of the product of the disruption, you either then fall into being one of the followers, or you end up being one of those that are disrupted. With knowing that, Gartner had just done a study. It's probably a year old now, so I'm sure it's changed slightly. But healthcare and life sciences are in the top 3% of all industries at greatest risk of being impacted by this digital disruption. And I'm just curious, have you seen how you've been disrupted by your own hands and also by the evolution of digitization? How do you equate that journey that you've gone through at Fuji to some of these companies here that are looking at it? How can Wisconsin possibly embrace that disruption and be looked upon as that?
Well, I think I think there's a company who can really relate to being disrupted and also being a disruptor more than Fujifilm. I think there's a great Harvard Business School case study, which is kind of the formation of many business school studies on disruption, where again I mentioned we were the leading manufacturer of X-ray film, and yet we developed, implemented, and commercialized digital X-ray, which essentially dropped X-ray film. So we put ourselves out of the X-ray film business. We were the first developer of a standing digital camera. We brought mini labs and kiosks into the CVS's and Walgreens. So in that case, we actually accelerated the reduction of film for digital technology. And we do that because we understand that one of the key survival tactics of being disrupted is you should be the disruptor. Because if you're not on the wave, you're under the wave. And so I think you'll find many times at Fujifilm, we have chosen the path to disrupt before we became disrupted. And it's a very courageous thing because you have to retool plants, you have to repurpose technology, and you have to reinvent yourself. So Fujifilm has a core competency to do that. And that's one reason why I think we're long-term investors in bio, because this is a business that will reinvent itself many times. And even though the research has been around for a long time, the commerce hasn't. This is a high-risk, long-term bet. And Fuji's willing to take it because we understand how to manage that. And that's really the reason. As far as Wisconsin goes, I have to be honest with you, I haven't been to Wisconsin much before last June, and now I find myself here every week. And I find that I'm so impressed not only with the CDI people, but with the community here. And that's one reason why we're deciding to make investments here, to grow our business here, and to continue to be members of your community.
Great. Stephen, from a concept of transforming, obviously IBM started this hit in your history as a small company selling something that probably wasn't always that great and sold it very darn well into an amazing company. And with that transformation, you've also pushed that level now with digitization. Obviously, your consumption of all of this digitization. As we've seen the amount of data that is being produced, and Cisco is one of the great routers and holders of moving that data, and we've actually partnered with you now, trying to look at the edge of the network and take the Internet of Things, all of these different devices that are growing from your handheld devices to your cars to, I just learned today, you can inhale something and it actually will read something out. That was quite amazing this morning. The growth of this data is getting is beyond petabytes to words we can't even think of how to describe anymore. And I know our partnership with Cisco and IBM is helping to now move that data into smart systems like Watson, so that it can be consumed, because you can be buried in the data and the data can become stale. And there's this fear that potentially that data, because there's so much of it, you can no longer even begin to understand what it is, and you spend more time sifting through to find the relevant data. I'm just curious, with how does IBM Watson really play in that. Obviously, we know the basics of it, but then how does that then translate into what's being done here with what Bioforward's doing and driving biotech?
Sure. I guess, I'd kind of mirror some of the comments around disruption first. IBM as a company made all of its profit selling punch cards. And then their researchers invented the first magnetic storage device. And they invented the RAID disk drive. And the company had to make a decision. Do we cannibalize our profits or do we advance the science? We advance the science. This is a company that spends $6 billion a year in pure research and is awarded more patents than any other company on Earth for the last 26 years. You know, when you use your GPS and it tells you how long it's going to take you to get somewhere, that's an IBM patent. IBM had the first patent around natural language processing. Some of these patents, you don't know they came from IBM originally. So we've had to disrupt ourselves multiple times. We're right in the middle of that happening again. We have 377,000 employees. I've only been here since October. I've got 377,000 new colleagues. This company is betting its future on cognitive technology because of the issue you raised, which is no human can keep up with the rate of acceleration around what's available to treat a patient. Not even just research data, but peer-reviewed, accepted best practice knowledge of how to treat a patient. Doctors just can't keep up with it. And then if you layer in the work we're doing in the genomic space with our genomics advisor, which is part of the Cancer Moonshot, where we can actually sequence the tumor and in an advanced cancer patient where medication, chemotherapy regimens are incredibly complex, we can help understand what the right trigger combination might be. That's the kind of work we're doing because humans just can't keep up with the amount of data that's available to them. So we need a cognitive assistant. I put it back in terms of, I'm a Star Trek fan, 50 years, this month. Bones always had the tricorder, right? But you always had Bones making the ultimate decision on the patient. That's our vision. We need to give physicians and researchers the tools that they need to really sift through all the data that's available to them. Why Wisconsin? For IBM, last October they acquired Novich Healthcare. That's where I came out of. We have a large presence in Wisconsin and Heartland. And in fact, we talk about our technology being used worldwide to manage 45 billion medical images. That's all built in Heartland. And that team is going to be some of the first people on Earth to embed artificial intelligence into PACS viewers. So imagine, because it's kind of crazy, radiologists, we take pure digital data off a modality, and we make it a picture, and we ask the radiologist to interpret it. So we lose the fidelity of all the original quantifiable data. So we're now building a platform so that we can derive measurements. We shouldn't have a radiologist say, well, I think it's this big, and I think it's here, and I think it's that far from, right? It makes no sense to have someone who's that trained really being that, inefficient. And so that's the work we're doing. And so in my advice to this group is you've got to look for these large platform players because we also recognize we can't do it ourselves. We've got incredible research assets, but there are going to be 20,000 algorithms built in medical imaging in the next 5 years, and we're not going to build them all. There are algorithms being built that will predict whether someone's going to survive an ICU stay, and if they survive, whether they're going to go home or to a rehab facility. It's incredible the kind of algorithms that are being developed, and so there is a huge amount of opportunity in a partnership model with people bringing these big platforms to the table and to the market.
And I agree. The concept of partnership, Cisco's a company of only 85,000 people across the world, but we have 486,000 partners, not partner people, but actual partners. So Cisco definitely gets the fact that this is a team effort. This is a village raising this child. And together, that partnership is there. And I would also really encourage that you don't fall into just the niche people trying to solve the one-off thing. In the long term, it's who you've affiliated with, who you're aligning with in the larger people who are going to be there through the hard times and the good times, and have the financial backing and the partnership backing to help you be successful in what you're trying to do. So that partnership is a very integral, I think, to all of our successes and what we've done. What are we doing for time? I don't see a clock. I think we're doing okay. As we move forward, if you had to look to what are the next disruptors, if you were thinking, we see the disruptors around today, we're moving into digitization, more things are moving, more Internet of Things. We're seeing the life cycle of companies being reinvented. Who would ever think now that you can actually have displaced cab drivers with Uber? Who would ever think you have corporations the size of Amazon that literally have no retail space whatsoever that are owning all of this? That's a disruption, and a digital disruption, and a disruption to how we do business today. But as we look forward, if you had to pull out your crystal ball to give an idea of where do you, and this is a throw ball because I didn't even ask this before, but where do you think we're going from here? Do you think this is a constant climb? Are we going to level off and live in the moment, or is this going to be an evolution where we're going to completely reinvent how healthcare is performed and how businesses interact with health services?
Well, I think, right now, at Fuji, our focus in the Regen Med side is to try and go from laboratory to clinic, and that's still an undefined pathway, and I think what we have is we have some pioneers out there, some of whom have been very successful, most of which we have not, and the reason they haven't is not necessarily the technology. It's because there isn't an infrastructure today to support the commercialization. And I think for small companies or independent researchers to go out and to drive the investment and then drive the knowledge, which is most of it is already out there in other industries ready to be adopted, I think that's where the next step needs to come. So we look at, for example, an NIH coming in and saying, instead of making your cells in your laboratory, where's your reproducible, low variability cell stock so that when you do research on one coast or in the middle of the country or on the other coast, that everyone can guarantee they're using the same level of quality of work. And I think so standardization and then putting in the infrastructure that real industries need to grow, that's the next step for a lot of these gene-based therapies, iPSC type product lines coming in. And I think what goes along with that is all of the infrastructure for IT. It's not only chemical processing infrastructure or quality infrastructure. That's everything that our companies do. And that I think is really where the next level of integration. Until that happens, it's hard to commercialize anything at a risk and a cost and a timeline that can be beneficial.
And as you're evolving to this world contributor of these solutions, that communication, that collaboration, that sharing of data is becoming even more paramount every day. No matter where you are in the world, you need to be able to get on a call or get on a video conference and share data, store that data, and provide it off for peer review.
And I think that's a really important point because it can't matter that someone has decided to focus and live in Madison, that the rest of the world and the country can't benefit from that. So information transfer is absolutely critical to making sure that we get the most out of everything that's being done.
Both sharing your findings, but also draw in the talent of others, because that collaborative lift is so much stronger than what can happen as one.
No question.
And then you wrap around the need for security and reliability within all of that. And I think that's where our companies are really trying to provide this cloud computing, and we're providing the right levels of security and privacy to make certain that we're not at risk for sharing this information and that it's not compromised.
Yeah, I would say one of our biggest challenges in healthcare is it takes too long to get innovation out of the lab and practice. Yes. It takes at least 15 years and usually 20 years. And so if you look at what's being developed today, so new biomarkers for the detection of Alzheimer's, by looking at things like amyloid beta plaque in the eye, right? And there's significant evidence where that is one biomarker that if you combine it with a few other biomarkers, we might be able to detect Alzheimer's patients who have no cognitive decline. And you might be able to find that 20 years before showing a PET scan. And what do you do with that, right? Think about what you would do with that and the kind of cognitive health industry that you could create and the effect it would have on manufacturers of new therapies and the ability to very subtly look at how someone reacts to a new kind of therapy. We're looking at in imaging, breast cancer is a big target of ours for two reasons. Huge false positive rate, where women have to go get very invasive biopsies and they don't have cancer, and a false negative rate of up to 20% where we're missing cancer. When do radiologists miss most of the reads? Lunchtime, because they're hungry. And so a machine helping a radiologist doesn't ever get tired. So you've got to figure out a way to look at an image of the breast and say, is this a cyst or is it cancer? And if you just adjust the curve 10% on the false positive rate in breast imaging in the US, that's $400 million a year freed up. And many biopsies that would never have to happen. Because you waste about $4 billion a year just on false positives in breast. And think of the stress and the fear that we could really deal with. So that's one area where breast cancer is a big target area. You find it early, you find it accurately, and you save people's lives. That's what we think. We actually think that this cognitive technology is a catalyst for that kind of change. In 10 years, so I think that's a long view of things. If you ever go to our research lab in Albany, there's a room where there's a microscope that can manipulate individual atoms. And they use this machine in partnership with chip manufacturers to make new superconducting materials. It took IBM 9 years to assemble this machine. And not because we got it at IBM. But this was a long-term view of what matters. And so in 10 years, our prediction is you're going to see radiologists play a very different role. They're going to be more of the doctor's doctor, helping doctors really consult on cases. And I think you're going to see machines that will help us understand really what's connecting the dots in the patient's care. Medical College of Wisconsin, one of their PIs published a paper last year. Radiologists, when they actually have the time to go look at the medical record and read through everything, which they don't usually have the time to do, they would change their opinion 18 to 20% of the time. If it was only 5%, that would be 279,000 Southwest Airlines planes full of patients that were misdiagnosed. So, if planes were falling out of the sky, we would change it. And so that's where in healthcare we just have to be focused on what really matters. And it is this kind of work around advancing and accelerating the timeline from in the lab to in practice. And I think that's what's possible.
And a lot of that is also connecting the right people to the right process to streamline it along. Kind of like how healthcare has gone from, I think our first keynote speaker spoke heavily about how it's not to continue care just from when the patient presents to the hospital, but it's now this whole life cycle as the patient leaves that hospital. How do we keep track of them? How do we know that clinical outcome actually was achieved? What were the barriers that prevented it from achieving? Or what lifestyles or things happened after they left? And I know Cisco is working very heavily with providing solutions for healthcare to allow the enablement of that continued physician-facing virtually to continue to follow those clinical trials and then aggregating that data and feeding it back into researchers where we're trying to really push that continuum of care to prevent things and to do outreaches and accelerate the solution quicker and faster.
Well,
standing up the right virtual machines at the right time so that you have them. I agree. We can't wait 20 years for every solution.
We'd like to actually tap into, so you just saw, today at a busy clinic, you just saw a couple hundred patients, easy. What if you could use the data on those patients and their conditions to inform your decision making on the patient in front of you? What if you could tap into that knowledge? That's where we need to get to. It's patient similarity decision support. What if we could actually say, this patient has this exact abnormality. pulmonary embolism, let's just say, what if you could go find 100 patients or 1,000 patients that have that exact condition and have those exact comorbidities and those similar demographics, and you could tell that doctor, this patient could be treated successfully because these 400 patients were. That's the kind of power we need to harness. And research has to do it, and then of course we have to get into the practice. That's I think what's coming.
Thoughts, Bruce?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the cycle time between discovery and practice, and then the predictive measures that then go back into discovery, is an area where there just isn't enough partnership now. We're also, I think the partnership between small companies and also the research community where a lot of the discovery work is going on, I think those partnerships are not quite solidified. I think this matchmaking process is kind of elusive. I think there's a lot of noise in the system, and I think there needs to be a way to tighten up the system, take time and risk out. You know, one huge barrier in our field is privacy. You know, just getting samples to do discovery work and the privacy of that is just limiting the time. We see projects that are delayed years because of privacy issues, which are critically important, but they still need to be solved. Getting enough donors is a huge issue for us. We see programs being delayed significantly because it's hard to get donors. The donor protocol is very tough right now. So there needs to be just a lot more efficiency and partnership in the system, and that's one of the ways you shorten the timeline. When you shorten the timeline, discoveries get out into the clinic faster, the cost of development goes way down, and then the risk barriers go way down. So more companies are willing to put more investment.
So what we did in imaging, so IBM's been working on this for about a decade. And we came in, we said, we don't have another decade, because there are a lot of small companies that are getting into this space, so we created a collaborative. And we have a number of health systems and IT partners who are helping us train Watson to read medical images. In fact, Frederick Hospital in Milwaukee is one of our partners. And to your point, we need curated patient data, de-identified data to train the platform.
Exactly.
Because that's how Watson builds its own algorithms, is it learns from curated cases. So we can tell Watson, this patient has this condition. And we show Watson 1,000 of those cases, or in breast imaging we're doing 15,000 of those cases. Watson's going to be able to recognize that going forward. So we've partnered with about 20 health systems to harvest that data. And it is hard because there's not an existing infrastructure to make this happen. And privacy certainly is the number one concern. But it is going to accelerate our time to market because these partnerships are the only way you really get what you want done when it comes from research to execution.
And as you're kind of take a little different turn, but as we've developed these solutions so far to date, as we're starting to develop new solutions and new ideas, I know, for example, Cisco is now partnered with a large medical facility out in San Francisco, creating a program to really accelerate. And we've created a lab together where we're getting a lot of different organizations together that are being backed by Cisco, amongst many other large companies, to kind of think tank and come up with new solutions in a very defined timeline manner. We're very time-bound in what we're trying to do. So it doesn't work that this concept could take 10 years to get done. Now, granted, on some of this medical stuff, you have no choice. But Cisco is definitely really investing in that cooperative think tank and getting academic background to it and backings and getting large companies to team together. Do you see that Fuji's as well as doing that as IBM?
You know, we do, and particularly partnering with the large research institutes right now, because what we see is that research funding today and work is too discreetly done. It's not, there needs to be a lot more collaboration between researchers from different areas. And government is trying to fund these multi-site studies, but I think today there's a lot of complications associated with that, especially with intellectual property. And so the real commercial barriers exist today that stop that work coordinating around between companies and research institutes because of the concern of who's going to own the IP, and then where's the value going to go. And so I think the world's changed a lot, and those commercial constraints, along with privacy constraints, along with protocol constraints, there needs to be some core group trying to work their way through it. IBM and Cisco and actually Fujifilm's a part. We're all part of an Internet of Things consortium together. And the point of that consortium is to create standards and projects to work together so that we can lower those barriers. That doesn't seem to be here today. And I think that role needs to be filled by either a consortium or a group that's willing to carry that forward.
Yeah, I think Bioforward's doing an amazing job.
I think that's a good example, actually.
Pulling all of you amazing companies and researchers together to collaborate, support each other, and being successful. I think that's really important. The other one I was thinking about while we were trying to think about other topics was how are you attracting and growing the talent that you need? I know Cisco is a constant vortex of talent that we're trying to draw in, and we are growing our own as well. We've created out of the STEM programs that we support across the world. We have a whole training program that we get well over 230,000 people a year apply to, and sadly today we can only take on about 1,800 people out of the 230,000 who apply. Are you doing your own homegrown? Are you also having these incubators of talent to try to help grow your business and your talent void that's there today? And I would assume that the smaller companies are having similar problems with attracting the right talent to grow the ideas.
For us, it's IBM, big picture, is a company in transition, right? So we're shedding legacy businesses that are not profitable. So you can imagine we're downsizing the business in one part, and then we're rapidly accelerating the cognitive business. So we're in the middle of this large transformation. But if you look at the imaging business alone, we've hired 350 people already in 2016 and doubled the size of our imaging group around R&D. Watson, of course, 18 months ago didn't exist, Watson Health. We've now got about 6,000 employees, so incredible growth. These large companies tend to have a different attitude about where you live. And that's nice, So I was just telling a story earlier backstage. I was out in San Francisco last week meeting with a client. I was getting kicked out of my hotel room, and I had a client conference call, and I had to do it. And I wasn't going to do it from a bar or a coffee shop. So I go on the IBM website, and I said, we must have an office in San Francisco. We had 4 offices within 5 blocks of where I was standing. And I was able, that's probably overkill, but I was able to get a conference room. But the point is, a large company like IBM, we have flexibility in hiring. And that's the good news. The challenge is the culture. And so, when you're coming from a smaller company or a startup into a company like IBM, it's a different world. And so you have to have the right ability to live in that kind of a culture. And that's where I think, a smaller business or a startup, if you're in the right town with the right talent pool, it's a brilliant thing. And then at some point, you're going to exit successfully, and that's when a company like IBM or Cisco comes along, or Fuji comes along. And so there's a culture change, but if it's the right marriage, it's an incredible thing.
Yeah, I agree. I actually want to build on the point a little bit that, and it's something actually Derek Kay said in the last talk during lunch. This is a business where you can attract people who are, who are really committed to saving lives. I've been in a number of businesses at Fujifilm and other companies, and I never experienced that. While it's exciting to be in the X-ray business or electronic materials, you don't have that same set of committed life skill that you do in kind of the bio business. And so I think finding people like that, I think, is not the difficult part. I think keeping everyone connected in a continuous learning environment is something which we're trying to work hard to do. And so, for example, it shouldn't matter that we're in Madison. We should feel like we have the resources in Boston or in San Francisco, in San Diego, or in Texas. So providing the opportunities for our researchers to feel like they're part of every community, for us, is the way to retain people and the way to hire people. And I think you get a double bonus by being in Madison, because if you've ever tried to live in those cities, it's incredibly expensive and incredibly difficult. And this is a wonderful place for young researchers to come in, for young employees to come in, raise families, and have a great lifestyle. So I think the combination of offering outreach so you don't feel like you're only in one city, and then secondly, providing a learning experience, and then thirdly, providing a great place to live, I think is really is what's working for us.
And that need to, even an old company like Fuji has now embraced the concept of the virtual employee, correct? I mean, you probably closed most of your offices.
Well, actually not. That might be Kodak, but so.
Well, not from a closed in
No.
that sense.
Actually, what we've really tried to do is repurpose everything. For example, we have a plant in South Carolina that made color paper, and that plant is now making other products for other industries. But I think, to your point, we tend to have to retrain people. So in our recombinant peptide plant factory in the Netherlands, we have a lot of people who made film all their lives who have been retrained now to make biologics. And I think that's a big part of Fujifilm, is to continue to retrain people rather than push them out and bring new people in.
So evolve the digital disruption.
Exactly, no question. Yeah.
You have to. The talent is also the talent you have within.
Right, and the talent is not only technical. There's institutional knowledge. There's infrastructure knowledge, and that's very valuable in this industry as well.
I'm getting the note for 5 minutes left. So, do you have any closing thoughts that you want to impart on all these great people from Wisconsin?
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having us up here today. I live in Chicago on the North Shore, so I took the scenic route through Lake Geneva, and I'll tell you, it's a gorgeous route. You forget how beautiful this state is if you're not here all the time. But I would say to the group here, you got to think about how you approach a partnership in this space, because we are all looking for the right partner. We're all looking for that next biomarker that could change cancer treatment, or could change COPD treatment, or the next algorithm that could radically change how long it takes to diagnose a patient. These things matter, and I think we all recognize that we're not all going to do it ourselves. So it is that spirit of research to commercialization that I think I would encourage everyone to think about. The researcher at IBM who started this imaging work that I'm doing, she got into this. She was an MIT-trained PhD. She actually invented the Roomba vacuum cleaner on a weekend when she was in school. But you know why she got into healthcare? Her dad had an ischemic stroke. Hemorrhagic stroke, and they gave him a blood thinner. He almost died. And so she decided that she was going to commit her life's work to saving lives. And she convinced IBM Corporate to give her a $100 million grant to go prove it. And so we know that these kinds of, to your point, this focus on what you can do to change lives is critical. So partnership is where I would encourage people to think. You've got incredible technology. Who do you want to work with to take it to market? That's what I would encourage you to do.
I just have a short ending comment, and that is that You know, Fuji's proud to be in this region. We're proud to be operating businesses in Wisconsin. We're making investments. You'll see in the next even week or months evidence of further investments for Fujifilm. We have a great respect for the communities we operate in. We serve to improve them in any way we can, and we're just really happy to be in Madison and also part of this Wisconsin initiative. Thank you.
Wonderful. And as Cisco, they are a world company, but they do have offices in Madison. Happy for me because it was the first company I ever had to drive to an office. Working for a large German company for too many years. But I can tell you that Cisco is here to help you be a collaborative, to enable your collaboration, your data, to protect your data, and to really help drive the underpinning of everything you're trying to do and help you be successful as well. And they are vested in every state, they're vested in every country, and we are your quiet partner in the background making sure you're successful. I appreciate the time.